This is a story about the power of surrender, saving the galaxy. In the original Star Wars trilogy, Luke is faced with the task of facing Darth Vader and the Emperor, the two big bad guys of the galaxy, and essentially taking them out. Now, the entirety of his Jedi training has been about using the Force for knowledge and defense, not for attack. It's about non-aggression. It's about, through passivity, discerning wisdom, and from there discerning what's right and wrong. And it's difficult to reconcile this with the need to take out a bad guy. Vader and the Emperor control the galaxy with an iron fist, and stopped they must be. On this all depends, says Yoda. Only a fully trained Jedi Knight, with the Force as his ally, can conquer Vader and his Emperor. If you choose to end your training now, if you take the quick and easy path, as Vader did, you'll become an agent of evil. In this context, it's the second movie, and Luke wants to rush to face Vader because he fears that his friends are going to die if he doesn't, and he's not ready. But he goes anyway, against his master's advice. Upon arriving, he goes in with this very cocky, pugnacious, arrogant mentality, as if he, a barely trained Jedi, could take out Vader, who's essentially the strongest person in the galaxy. And of course, he can't. He lands a few blows, but Vader, for the first part of the fight, just fights him with just like with two hands, right? Just like not even moving, hardly trying, right? And then Luke jumps on him with his sword. Vader just absorbs it, and with one arm pushes him, and Luke flies down the stairs. That's how outmatched he is. But that's also how arrogant he was to come into this fight to begin with, without realizing how outmatched he was. So he pays a price for this arrogance. But before that, the end of this battle, when he loses completely, Vader says a very important line. He says, "Only your hatred can destroy me." Vader's intention is to turn Luke evil. So from that standpoint, it's a very fitting line. But if he was saying this in a realistic sense or a loving sense, it would be completely foolish. If Luke were to take such an act, a binding act of violence against him, he essentially would become Darth Vader. I know that may sound cheesy or like wishy-washy, but it's true. He won't literally become that same person, but the same forces that turned Darth Vader into Darth Vader would work on Luke, because Darth Vader at one point was a normal person before he became this bad guy. So, with regard to that line, Vader's saying the right thing to get Luke to turn evil. And Luke takes the bait. He's trying to kill Darth Vader. He has a mission, and he's going to accomplish it as far as he's concerned. And it's actually good for him that he didn't. It's good for him that he was outmatched, because otherwise he would have killed this guy, and he later finds out that Vader is his father. So Luke essentially gets destroyed in this battle, and he somehow manages to escape. Now in the next movie, this is when the surrender occurs, his Jedi training has taken maturation. And it's because he went through this horrific experience that he finally matured into understanding the wisdom of Yoda's teachings. Had he just continued learning stuff in a forest, it would have been good. He would have spent more time meditating, focusing, training. The real test of all this stuff, though, is in real life, with respect to our real missions and our real goals and our day-by-day living. Within the context of a forest and an enclosed training ground, it's theoretical. And you can set the ground to develop you into what you need to be. The real test is outside, though. So Luke needed this experience. He needed to pugnaciously pursue this very aggressive pursuit in order to realize how off the mark he was. He was beaten so badly, he got his arm cut off, and he nearly fell to his death because he jumped off of a cliff type thing. He got saved. So in the next movie, he still needs to take out Vader and the Emperor. The mission is not over yet. And he takes a different route. He knows Vader is his father, and he ordains that he can't kill his own father. He submits himself to the Empire, believing that the Force will work and that he can achieve his goal through love. He says he submits his weapon to the Imperial guy, the soldier guy. The soldier turns him over to Vader. He says to Vader, "I know you were once Anakin Skywalker, my father." Vader says, "I don't have a lightsaber yet. That name no longer has any meaning for me." Right? He goes from being peaceful, he gets aggravated when he hears that. And he has this Luke's lightsaber in his hand. It's not open, but he just points it at him and brandishes it and says that. And Luke says something to the effect of, "Look within yourself. You can't do this. You're not this person. Come with me." He says, "Obi-Wan once thought as you do. You don't know the power of the dark side. I must obey my master." Luke says, "Then you'll be forced to kill me. If that is your destiny, then my father truly is dead." And Luke gets taken away by the soldiers, and there's a subtle scene, lasts 5 to 10 seconds. Vader just walks pensively, puts his hand on a ledge, and just thinks about what he just heard, what just happened. And then the conditioning kicks back in again. He needs to be Vader, he needs to go back, he needs to be the Emperor's lapdog and turn Luke in, and the plot continues. They face the Emperor, they meet the Emperor, and the Emperor, up till this point, we've not seen his face. Not directly. You see him from the side, you see him from a distance, you see him, you don't get a direct shot like this. They meet the Emperor, and they show him full on, and he is ugly. He's evil, he's monstrous, and like from the standpoint of a movie character, it's, you get it. But like from a standpoint of like a person, it's hideous. His name is Darth Sidious, right? It's hideous. It's scary. His eyes are red or yellow red. His skin is wrinkled in this extremely grotesque, weird way, and he's green. Or at least he looks green. And his voice is menacing. There's no joy in it. There's no love in it. The only expression in him is calculative and pointedly, selfish, evil. I don't know how to put it, but basically he taunts Luke for the next however many minutes, not just by telling him annoying things. He's showing him scenes of Luke's friends being killed in this little ambush that the Emperor set up, and he's trying to turn Luke evil. He knows that Vader is old. If Luke kills Vader, Luke would have done a cardinal act that cannot be undone, which would essentially give him, the Emperor, grounds to dominate Luke the way he dominated Vader. The path to the dark side is slippery. People don't start out that way. They evolve into it through a series of decisions. Vader was that way. Luke could have been that way. Luke keeps on refusing. He's operating from love. He wants his father to come with him. He wants his father to become good. That's how much he loves him and cares for him. And paradoxically, this is the only way they can actually save the universe too. Killing Vader wouldn't have worked. He may not have been able to do it, and it doesn't It's not the way. Eventually, they start fighting, and then Vader really taunts him, saying that he'll convert his sister, Princess Leia, to the dark side, and Luke flips. And finally, all that rage of getting his hand cut off, that rage of all the evil this guy has done, that rage, that primal rage that's within each person, even the most devout people, the most saintly people, they have that to some extent. And Vader pushed his buttons, and though Luke had developed so much to bring himself to this point, he still had that bit of rage. And he went berserk. He pops out of nowhere with his lightsaber, and he is now swinging away, bashing Vader. This guy who dominated him in the last movie. And he gets Vader on the ground. And after Vader's on the ground, Vader's holding his thing, defending himself, and Luke hits it 3 times. He's bashing his lightsaber, hits it up, and then chops his hand off, and Vader just collapses and screams. And Luke sees these wires coming out of Vader's wrist. Vader, too, has a robot hand. Looks at his own hand. And he sees that the transformation is happening. That he is turning into that. And he also sees what they have in common. He throws his lightsaber away. He turns to the Emperor and says, "Never. I'll never turn to the dark side. You failed, Your Highness. I am a Jedi, like my father before me." And the Emperor knew at this point that he'd lost. He wouldn't be able to corrupt this person. So then he starts to kill him. He shoots out these lightning rays from his fingers. And he's just electrocuting Luke. And Luke is sitting there, writhing on the floor, screaming in agony. He says, "Father, please." And he's just writhing, shouting, screaming. And he says, "Father, please," again. Camera goes to Vader. Emperor here, Luke here. His old life. His son. His old life. His son dying. Everything that he had built over decades, every aspect of his job, his status, his position, his empire. His son being killed by this guy. He picks up the Emperor, carries him, and he's getting electrocuted the whole way, and he throws him into a pit, and he collapses. And he says, as they're about to leave this Death Star, "Son, help me take this mask off." And that's symbolic. It's literal, obviously, but it's symbolic. This mask, this Darth Vader ego, this mask I've been wearing. But you'll die. Nothing can stop that now. Just for once, let me look on you with my own eyes. Takes off the mask, and under this really cool mask. He's this shriveled, decrepit, completely pale, scarred person. That's just underneath the mask all this time. That's what he really is. He says, now go, son. Leave me. I'll not leave you here. I got to save you. You already have, Luke. You already have. And he dies. And there goes Vader and the Emperor. See, Luke, when he tried to go in with his swords, he lost. He lost in the last movie. If he did the same thing here, even if he managed to kill Vader, he would have turned evil or he would have been killed. He couldn't have actually killed these people. And given that the fate of the galaxy relied upon him, he had to do this correctly. He had to surrender. It's not to say to give up the mission, but it's to say to see the humanity in the other. Surrender your ego. Surrender to universal will and trust that things can work in ways that we can't see when we're shooting at each other, or swinging swords, or engaging in violence. And it took a big sacrifice. He was willing to sacrifice his life. He threw away his weapon in the midst of the lion's lair. And only by doing that was he actually saved. And so was Vader, because he found again his soul, which had been locked behind that mask, behind that suit, behind that character. And in the literal sense, at the end of the day, both the Emperor and Vader died. And the Death Star was blown up, and the saga was over. The galaxy had fireworks. They cheered. They could live in peace now. Because Luke did his job correctly. The reason Star Wars had a magic is that these concepts were explored or demonstrated. There's a mysticism to it. And in the first movie, Luke blows up the Death Star. So it's all great, the bad guys are over. But they're not. They just built a new one. They had to get it at the root cause. And that's what he did in this movie, Return of the Jedi. So that's a story about surrender, and I encourage you, find a way in which there's a personal relationship or a personal situation with life that you're dealing with that you can allow yourself to surrender to rather than fighting it oppositionally. See the humanity within the person that it is. See the lesson that the situation may be attempting to offer, and take it. Act in accordance with your deeper and better instincts. Who knows? You may even just save the galaxy within your own self. Things may work in ways you could never have conceived of. Just as Luke may never have thought that the Emperor would have killed Vader to save Luke. When just in the last movie, Luke tried to kill Vader. Surprising things can happen.